Merry Meet, Annie here. Welcome back to the Flow of the Rite series. We have just blessed and cleansed the elemental symbols on our altar. And that is the first act of casting. We have made an offering of those symbols to all four quarters, thereby acknowledging the power of the element that will be called to our circle by the presence of that element in circle. And now we move on to the second casting, Aspurging and Censing the circle. Aspurging is simply the act of combining the elements of water and earth and literally dampening the circle in some way. Sprinkling it about, tossing it about, whatever our personal style is for doing it. Censing is adding our incense to our heat source or lighting our incense if we're using a stick or cone incense, and then using that to bless the space. Remember back when we were talking about cleansing and blessing and the idea of projective and receptive energies? That comes into play again in the concept of asperging and censing circles. A lot of the books you see will tell you to asperge your circle first, which means blessing it with water and earth, water and salt, and then blessing it with fire and air, which is however we arrive at our smoking incense. That indeed is the way I was taught to do it, asperge first and then sense. I see a lot of books that teach us to sense first, using the smoke moving through our circle, and then using the water to asperge the circle. I'm not going to say either one of those things is right or wrong because it has to do with why we choose to do it in whatever order we choose to do it in. I have to admit it doesn't make any sense to me to use the projective elements of air and fire to fill the space with smoke, and then to dampen it down, literally, figuratively, and energetically with the power of water and earth, to bring it down to that receptive level. It makes sense to me to asperge first, and then to sense, creating that receptive environment with the water and salt, and then filling it with the powers of fire and incense. What matters is whatever order you do it in, you know why you're doing it. I do it with asperging first. Before I begin, I do, as I did when I did the first casting, say or chant, 3 times round I call upon the power of the elements. Or 3 times round I call upon the power of the elements. So asperging begins by holding up whatever you have, holding your water, your vessel, your chalice, your cauldron, and putting salt in it 3 times. There should be nothing hurried about your actions. You are in the second round of casting, so you are doing holy work. Take your offering then, the water which now has the salt in it, stir it to dissolve your salt, move around your circle. Speaking of around your circle, for normal workings, I don't do anything counterclockwise in my circle. I tend to prefer moving in a clockwise motion. You do see some castings where the casting, the asperging, might be done counterclockwise and censing clockwise. It's whatever feels right for you. My movements in circle, unless there's a particular reason why I've set about doing it differently, are clockwise. Mostly for logical reasons of not breaking the flow of my movement, of feeling there is a flow and not a reverse flow at any point. See what it's like for you. It's different for each of us. As I move around my circle, sprinkling water as I go, the symbol of water and earth, I say, holy and sacred, this offering is made, cleansing this place and banishing all that is not welcome here. That's my take on the old exorcising, banishing way of using earth and salt in the old school ceremonial workings. Kinder, and gentler, preparing the space. Aware of the fact that I'm using those two receptive elements, laying them upon the perimeters of my circle, knowing that they will welcome and receive what comes next, and symbolically welcome and receive all that happens in circle. When I come back to my altar, out of a habit, going back to the days when I was priestess and then gave a blessing around the circle to my coven mates, or when I was in circle and my priestess brought it to me, when I arrive back at my altar, I take a bit of that salt water and I give myself a blessing. If someone else were in circle with me, I would go to each person in the circle and give them a blessing. And then it's time for just adding my incense to my coals, or lighting the incense if it is a stick or a cone. And when I've made an offering of the incense and I'm going along nicely with the smoke, I move it around my circle, saying, "Holy and sacred this offering is made, blessing this space and declaring it a time and place set aside." Very aware as I'm doing this that the smoke is filling what I'm declaring to be my circle. I've declared the place holy by the laying down of the salt and water, and now I am filling the entire space with the power of the elements of air and fire. I'm literally feeling it lifting and separating from the mundane room around me. If I'm outside, a sense of separation, drawing back from or moving away from the natural world where I've cast my circle. A sense of separation. The power of inhaling that smoke. It takes you there in your magic mind, but it takes you there at a spiritual level too. When I've circled and come back to the altar, I make an offering over the altar of that smoke. And I bless myself with it. If there's others with me, I bless them too. We have performed the first 2 castings of the 3 castings of circle. The first is making an offering of the elements to the quarters, and the second is censing and aspurging. The third casting is the laying down and the separation of your circle. Until then, I wish you mirth and reverence, merry part,